Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, Scott Carson, jacked up to be here with you today, and really excited for this episode. I know a lot of you have reached out, and when we talk to our students and talk to our audience out there, yes, y'all love note investing, y'all love real estate, but a lot of y'all need some help with some basics to get rocking and rolling. Especially for some of our social media followers, like how do I get started? I don't have no money. I've got issues. And one of the things that we find, especially when I'm talking with not only our followers out there, but also when we're talking to our distressed borrowers out there, they need some help with just normal money issues and or budget in a lot of cases. And so we're really excited to have a guest expert on that. He is the founder of mybudgetcoach.com. He is also a real estate investor, but he is a badass when it comes to the monthly numbers and making sure you get your shit together in a lot of cases. And his approach to budgeting, I think you guys will love because it's a little unique and definitely stands out from the crowd. So in our extended series of interesting people you meet at FinCon, we're honored to have Mr. Zach Wechel join us here from the Bluegrass States, Lexington, Kentucky today on the Net Culture Show. What is going on, Zach? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. It's a good day to be in the Bluegrass State, Kentucky. Our basketball team, we've got a new coach. I don't know if you follow that at all, and we're playing Duke tonight, so it's a big deal for us over here.
Definitely big blue bloods there for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh
It
yeah.
is exciting. I think Calipari had overstayed his welcome a little bit.
Yep. We,
Um,
we we ran him out of town, and we got a new guy, and I think we're excited about it. So we'll see how it goes.
You know what? We here in Austin, obviously Austin's a bit of a basketball school here. It'll be interesting to see what it does in the SEC. But we played Kentucky, I think, football in 2 weeks for the first time in a long time. So it's
Okay.
we did
Cool.
definitely. But Duke and Kentucky, that's going to definitely that's always a big match out there.
Yes. Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
Now, what's interesting? This is a side point. You think about all these kids that have new NIL deals, name, image, and
Yeah.
likeness, stuff like that. And when I was in college, I didn't have a lot of financial education. I learned it from my own. When I became a banker, I would deal with some big names at the University of Texas coming like big, like creme de la creme names on the field, national championship winners, NFL players coming in that couldn't even budget their checking account right in a lot of cases. Like their account was overdraft for their rental wheels being drafted wrong and a lot of stuff there for you. So um, I know you've got a passion for helping people. Let's first dive into how you got started to where you're at and kind of what's led to where you're at today.
Yeah. So yeah, budgeting. I think it gets such a bad rap. It's such like a scary word, or it feels so restrictive to people, right? But yeah, it's crazy to me how much people focus on the money they make. Like you talked about, these people that are like really good at what they do, they would make a ton of money, and yet we don't really focus that much on like the outgoing of our money, right? Like we
Yeah.
we spend 40 hours a week plus, or like we're spending all this time like investing like your audience in like real estate, all these things, and yet when it comes to how we spend our money, it's like I don't really even know what happened. I guess I just my money just kind of went out the door and who knows. So yeah, my wife and I, we were kind of like that until about 4 years ago when we started actually budgeting. We started using like a proper zero-based budgeting tool. I don't know if you
Mm.
know the kind of difference in the different like budgeting strategies or whatever, but zero base is basically where you take every dollar you own and give it a job before you spend it. Right. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll look at their bank account and they'll be like, I guess I've got 700 bucks in there. And I guess, we're getting paid on Friday. And I guess that, I think we paid this bill. And you do a bunch of mental math on like, can you or not afford something? Right. And like, to me, that's just crazy. Like nothing
Yeah.
should ever just be mental math off the top of your head. So zero-based budgeting is a tool where you basically make a plan for your money before you spend it. And it was just a game changer for us. So we started doing this like 4 years ago. We had two kids during the pandemic. We started learning how to budget because our family was changing, all that stuff. And we became so passionate about it that we like became kind of those go-to people for our friends and family. We started teaching a class at our church. So we actually taught like this quarterly class at our church. We lived in England for last year for like 3 months, which was kind of a
Nice.
crazy thing for us, but we wanted to see what it was like to live abroad. And the church that we visited over there, we're like, hey, can we teach this class here as well? And they're like, sure, great. So, we've kind of taught it around the world, but we just love this stuff.
Nice.
It's changed our life, and we just want to help other people learn how to do it as well.
I love that. That's definitely great to have a passion for it when you see how it changes not only your life but others, and really gives you a kick in the butt to keep doing it because it becomes not just a job or a necessity, it becomes a passion. And I think so many people they shame themselves for not having a budget or bouncing a check or not putting their money together that it weighs them down from taking that turn and taking accountability. Hey, we need to do something. Let's stick to it and get going into it, right?
Yeah, I mean, so many people like a first step that's hard for a lot of people is just like looking at your checking account or like looking at your credit card account and just like seeing like what did I spend money on, right? It's like yeah, it's one of those things that where we know we should have a plan, we know we should budget, but we don't. And why is it that we don't? Because I think budgeting is super fun, right? Like my wife and I sit down every week and we say, what do we want to do with the money that we have? Like, what is valuable to us in the world? Like, what do we want to pursue? And we get to sit there and make a plan together. Like, we get to get on the same page together and then go out there and execute that plan. Like, that's fun to me, and I want to share that kind of joy with others too.
Yeah, that's definitely when you're on the same path and have the same values to put things into place that makes it easier. What do you say for folks that maybe their spouses have a little bit different spending habits? Maybe Amazon visits their house a little too often out there compared to others.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a whole thing, right? Different couples, different things work for
Yeah.
different people, right? I mean, for me and my wife, like we share all of our finances and we've like done the hard work of hashing out to come to like a shared understanding. And that doesn't mean that we started that way, right? Like we have different priorities. We're different people, right? Like, and so a budget though makes us come together and hash out those priorities and try to come to a shared understanding. And that means I'm giving in some areas, she's giving in other areas. But as long as we have that long-term kind of plan in place, like we know what we're headed towards. And that's one of the things I love about zero-based budgeting is like you get to the point, they call it zero-based because you get to the point where every single dollar has been assigned to a category. So there's $0 left that don't have a job essentially. And
Mhm.
so that doesn't mean that you can't change things around, right? Like we always end up going over in some category, pulling that money from somewhere else. But the beauty of it is when you pull it from somewhere else, you're choosing where to pull it from. And that's a discussion you can actually have, right? We can say, like, do we want to spend more on eating out? Sure. Like, it's awesome. Like, there's this cool restaurant. We want to do it. Where do we want to pull that money from? And if it's worth it to us to, buy something less on Amazon or spend less at groceries or whatever, we can make that decision. But when people just look at their bank account and they're like, I'm just going to spend because I have money, they don't know the implications of what they're doing, right? Like it might be that you wanted to have that money set aside to invest in your property or to save up for the next property or to do any of those things, but you don't know the implications of what you're choosing to do because you don't have a plan. You have to have a plan in order to know those implications.
Yeah. Now, how long would you say people should take a look at? Should they take a look at the last month, the last 90 days of their spending? Should they
In
download?
order to like
'Cause-
establish what their budget should be.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because looking 30 days back is different, but we look at like what's coming up with the holidays. Obviously, people see a lot of expenses or more things happen with parties and eating out maybe a little bit more or
Yeah.
buying gifts for family members too. That can be kind of an intimidating thing too.
Yeah, so this is like kind of another misconception that we see with budgeting is like some people think of budgeting as like a one and done thing,
Right.
right? Like you get out a spreadsheet, you write down some numbers, maybe you look back 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you try to like get those averages, you put them down, and then you like feel good about yourself. You're like, yay, look, I made a budget. And like that one time Excel spreadsheet thing, that doesn't change your behavior, right? Like if you're not living in your budget, if this isn't like something that you like sticks with you, then it's not actually going to change your behavior and you're not actually going to stick to your plans at all, right? So what we say is like your budget should be like a living document. You should use a
Hmm.
tool that helps you do all this kind of allocation and seeing how much you have in all your categories. And you should change it all the time. Like my wife and I change our numbers all the time. As your priorities in life change, as your values change, how you spend your money should change. And so I wouldn't stress out too much about finding the perfect numbers to get started. Just pick a tool, put some numbers down, see how it goes, and then change it over time. Again, having a plan and changing that plan is so much better than having no plan.
Totally is. Uh, Having a plan is planning for success. Having no plan is planning to fail, as they always say. I probably butchered that saying a
Correct.
little bit there, but now the reason I love having you on here, you're also a real estate investor. You've bought and sold and bought and flipped some property out there. You're dealing with an issue right now of
Sure.
a water leak from Junior in a new house there before you. But as an investor, I'm willing to bet that you and your wife put in place into your budget a bucket for your real estate investing and putting money towards down payments, stuff like that. Would I be correct in assuming that?
Yeah. Have you read the Richest Man in Babylon book or whatever?
Yes, and I'm friends with Clifton Cortenman, who rewrote it for the richest person in Babylon recently. So
Okay.
too,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yep.
Yeah, I met Clifton at FinCon. I didn't realize he wrote that. That's cool. There's a concept in there of like luck comes to those who are like prepared to
Yeah.
take advantage of the luck or whatever. I think it's a story about like cattle outside of a city or something.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, that's always stuck with me. I mean, my wife and I, so we're in our third house now. Every house that we've owned, we've always kept the house and bought something else and then rented out the previous house. So we're not like these huge real estate moguls, but we've just always been intentional about never buying too much of a house that we can't afford to then go out and get the next one. And I would say like all of these situations, like we can get into them. They're all really weird situations. The first one was like a landlord who we knew was selling, and we approached him and said, "Could we do a rent to own situation?" And he gave us like 90% for 18 months towards the purchase price
Wow, that's a nice
because he
chunk.
knew that he'd be avoiding realtor fees, all that stuff. And so that was enabling us to get into it to start. But yeah, like we have been so diligent with our money for a decade, right? We've lived below our means for a decade, and that's set us up to be able to take advantage of these weird situations that have come up with houses. Like the second house we purchased that was like off the market, there was like animal damage. This guy ended up like doing like this weird like three-way call with the parties that were interested to like bid on the phone against each other, and the other parties were so weirded out by that they like bailed, and so we got it at like this great price. Like, but all this is because we've lived under our means and we've had a budget and we've saved all this money and we've been prepared to take advantage of these lucky situations. So yeah, like now we have buckets in our budget for that next property. We have budgets for maintenance on the current properties. All of those things are things we prepare for. And you mentioned like Christmas and like all of that stuff. Like we would say like no 2 months are ever the same. And so what
Right.
you should do in a budget is you should basically say like, I know Christmas is coming every year in December. I know problems are going to happen with my real estate properties. Like, and so we put aside money every month so that when those things happen, we're ready for it. So like I've got a line item sitting here for Christmas. It's November. I've been contributing to that line item for 11 months now, right? I've got the money sitting there ready for Christmas. And so many people would just like put it on a card and then figure out how to pay it off. Like we prepare for these things because we have a plan.
Well, but then you're also saving not having to pay 20 to 30% interest rates on credit card, which is just
Awful.
stupidly ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just absolutely don't know how they get away with that not being usury out there, but that's one of the most contributing factors, I think, to people never ever getting ahead. Or the buy now, pay later aspect of things. It's a bad financial strategies, I guess you'd say. It's not really a strategy for failure, but a strategy for the lenders on those things for sure.
Yeah, and a good budget will help you never outkick your coverage or whatever, right? You'll never outspend the cash that you have. So like if you do choose to use a credit card, like we're fine with that, right? Like use a credit card, just use a tool that helps you set aside the money so it's ready to pay off that credit card. And that way you can take advantage of the points or whatever, and you're not going to go into debt.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree to the points aspect of it, but make sure it gets paid off every
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
month.
Yeah, if you can't control that, then yeah, don't mess with it because it's not worth the 20%.
Right now, one of the things that obviously was big on the election, we're not going to get into who you voted for, anything like that, but it was the inflation and people having less at the end of each month with costs going up, stuff like that. What's your counsel for folks that are seeing more month at the end of their paycheck?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so many people live paycheck to paycheck, right? And it's not even people that you might think like, oh, people who don't make that much money or people who aren't that smart or whatever, but that's not the case. Like people that make a ton of money still live paycheck to paycheck. And
Yep.
this drives me crazy, right? Because it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much you can save over time, right? That's how you can build wealth, that's how you can invest in properties, like all of those things, right? So we talk to so many people who live paycheck to paycheck, and what we try to help them do is break that cycle, right? You want to get to the point where the money you're spending this month is not the money that you just made, right? It's the money that you made a month ago,
Right.
2 months ago, and you've got that buffer. So, like in my budget, my wife and I always keep like a 2 month buffer. So we have our buckets kind of filled for this month, we have our buckets filled for December, and we've got January filled. And once we have those months ahead of us filled, the extra money, that's the money we know we can start, putting towards investments or putting towards savings or whatever. We always have a buffer. And so I'd say like people need to be people are too like unkind to themselves or too optimistic. They'll be like, I can only spend, $600 on groceries, and it's just not realistic anymore. So like embracing those true numbers, setting aside the money for it, setting aside a buffer, and then spending the fun money or the investment money or whatever. Like once you have that buffer, like you need a tool to help you do that essentially.
Hmm. I totally agree. You got to have a tool and an easy tool to use that you can tap into on a regular basis, right?
Correct. Yes.
A lot of people like the old, let's just draw it up on a piece of paper as an Excel spreadsheet. Well, if you don't understand Excel or you don't make it easy to access or use, you're never going to use that tool, right?
Yeah, and we would also say like you want to pick a tool that can connect to your bank and can bring in your transactions, right? Because like manually putting your transactions in, for some people it works and it's good to have that top of mind and they need that discipline. For me personally, I couldn't keep up with it, right? I
Right.
need my transactions to be pulled in automatically. I need to go in and approve them, right? Because it's good for me to have eyes on everything that we're spending as a family, but it shouldn't be super cumbersome, right? You need to lower the kind of the effort bar so people actually stick with it for sure.
Now let's talk about you guys' app and how you guys are
Sure.
separate out there because I think it's very important out there. I've really started to play around with your tool a little bit, and I really enjoy it when we have somebody on. I like to dive into things. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I love the fact that it obviously connecting to the bank account makes it very easy, but then to go to identify which buckets those things are going to is one of the easiest things. And it really does give a true, you can see a snapshot of where you're really spent your money's going in a lot of cases too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when it comes to the budgeting app landscape, there are literally hundreds of budgeting apps out there. And there's a ton of good tools. And like I will always say, like the best budgeting app is the one that you're actually going to use, right?
Yeah.
So like I'll talk about like our platform, why I think it's different, but like even if you don't like our platform, pick something because a tool is better than no tool. A plan is better than no plan. But yeah, as far as our app, the insight that we kind of gathered, like my wife and I teaching budgeting to friends and family, is that zero-based budgeting is hard. It is a skill. It is a life skill that you have to learn. And, people complain all the time about like, why wasn't I taught this in school? Why didn't my parents teach this? Like, it's going to take you a while to like get over that learning curve and learn how to do this. And so basically what we found is like people need help. They need a hand. They need somebody to talk to about this stuff. And so my budget coach is kind of a brand that is a budgeting app. So you get all the tools that you need to connect to your bank, to set up your categories, to actually track your transactions, but you also get that coach. And we think that coach is super important to actually helping people succeed. And we have like a directory on our website. We have over 30 coaches on the platform. We just got back from FinCon. I think we talked to like 40 coaches that were interested in joining. So, we're growing rapidly on the coaching side for sure. But we think it's important that you can get on a directory, read through these coaches' bios, and just find somebody that connects with you for whatever reason, right? It might be like the level of income, it might be their background, it might be their like profession that they've been a part of in the past. It might be the fact that they speak Spanish or English or a different language. Like that's really important to people as well. So you basically get on there, you pick a coach, you set up your budget, and you've got a coach there to help you set it up and to help you along the way. And that's kind of what makes us different.
Well, I love that because having the coach comes with something that a lot of us really struggle with, and that's accountability. It,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and we all go through different things. I mean, your budget's different now with two kids than it was with one kid, than it was with
Yep.
no kids.
Yep.
it's
Absolutely.
it's different now as we get older. Where do you and by all means, this is not financial advice, but where do you suggest people start maybe trimming their expenses, trimming their budgets? What are some of the maybe the top two or three categories that people can find hidden money in their budgets to put towards savings or investing or other things out there that's important?
Yeah, goodness, yeah. So I have like my own personal takes. Like I'll say like as a brand, like kind of the thing that makes us unique is you've got all these coaches and they have all their different opinions, right? So like as a brand, like we don't have too many strong opinions we take because we think coaches can coach in different ways and have different
Yep.
takes. My personal takes would be, amongst my peers or friends or whatever, I see people like paying a lot for cars when they don't need
Oh,
to, right? Like
here,
my
I
yeah.
don't mean to interrupt you, Amir, but
Yeah,
I got
go for it.
to. So there was an article that came out from lendingtree.com ranking the 50 the biggest metros as far as non-mortgage debt.
Yep.
Okay. And auto loan payments was like the number one category in
Yeah.
27 out of the 50 markets. With San Antonio, the average, get this, average auto loan debt per person was 18 grand.
Gosh.
That's just crazy. But that's the thing. Paying for brand new cars, 700 to 1,000 bucks or more per car payment just seems so stupid to me
Yeah,
out
I
there.
mean, if you add up the opportunity cost over your lifetime of doing that, it is the difference maker, right? That's the difference between buying properties over time and building wealth and just staying in debt essentially. So like my wife and I, we my cars throughout my history, I've actually turned a profit on. I think I'm on my third or fourth car, and I like my first car I bought for $500. It was like a
Yeah.
Jeep Wagoneer in '82. Had like an Olympics logo because they sponsored the Olympics back in the '80s or something on it. But
84.
84, maybe. I don't remember. Yeah. The fact that you remember that's great. But I sold that thing on eBay for like 1,500 after I drove it for like 6 years or something. And then I bought a night in 86 VW Rabbit, I think, because the gas mileage was so good. And I sold that for a profit as well. That one actually came from Hawaii. It was like shipped over from Hawaii to Wisconsin. Apparently, the lore on that was it was owned by the Archbishop of Honolulu. So it's like my friends called it the Pope Mobile for, just because it was funny.
You had God on
Anyways,
your side with that one.
yeah, right. And I needed it because it would run out of brakes. I'd have to like to brake, I'd have to like downshift consistently for several months because like the brakes were so bad.
The
But
Fred
anyway,
Flintstone form of braking. Take your foot out the window.
so like I probably have a much higher tolerance for
Yeah.
dealing with these things than most people, but the difference there is that like I've saved so much money on cars, and again, like luck favors those who are prepared for it, right? Like all that money that, my wife and I've chosen to be diligent with over the years enabled us to buy these properties, enabled us, I mean, honestly, enabled us to get to this point where we're able to start this company. Like I just quit my full-time job working for this cush um, you know, uh I was like a software developer in like a cush corporate environment, and I quit like that high paying job in order to do something I was passionate about. And the reason I was able to do that was because we've made all these, sacrifices over the years. And to me, working on something I'm passionate about is just so important. And like, especially I've got two young boys who are watching their dad, like, and I want to show them that this is, it's more important to do something that you value in the world than just to make money. So anyway, long-winded answer, but that's kind of my top take would be cars, but yeah.
Definitely, totally agree to that because we just had to. Same thing. I buy my cars, take care of them. As long as you take care of them, they
Yep.
last. I just had to buy a new to me vehicle because the Dodge Ram pickup that had been which had been paid off for over 10 years. We totaled in an accident and I had to go buy a newer one. And I was like, I'm not paying 80 grand for a new pickup. I'll buy something that's a few years older and get a better deal. I'll have it almost paid off from the
Yeah.
insurance settlement. But that's the thing is the Teslas, these high-end like Ford Broncos out there, 80 grand a pop. Or when I was truck shopping, $125,000 for a Ford Raptor. I'm like, who is paying this stuff? It's
Yeah.
just
And like
just
if
mind-boggling.
if that's your thing, right? Like, I mean, we would say like spend according to your values, right?
Yeah,
Like whatever you value, like make sure you spend your money there. And we're not going to tell, like as a brand, we're not going to tell you what to value, right? Like
yeah.
if cars are your thing and like you just love it, you geek out about it, like sure. But for your average person who doesn't get that much value out of it, but still spends an outsized amount of their cash on it, that's what drives me crazy because they're not spending according to their values. The truth is, there's probably other things that they value more, but because they don't have a plan moving forward, they look back and they say, shoot, I guess I spent more on things I don't value and I missed out on the things that I do value. And that's what I hate to see, right? I want to see people that are, diligent with their money so that they spend according to what they want to do in the world and think that through beforehand instead of just letting life happen to them.
Yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense. What are the other things that you think people can trim or eliminate from their monthly budget in some cases to help that bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, food is always one. Like, I mean, you see a lot of like door dashing these days, right? People that pay like a completely out, like huge amount of money and like all those fees. Like DoorDash is so frustrating to me because you look at it at first, you're like, ah, $7 for this. And it's like this fee, that fee, that
Yep.
fee. And then it ends up being like double or triple what you think it's going to be towards the end. So, yeah, I would say like all the little things add up, right? And like when you're touching those on a daily basis or when you have to pull that money from somewhere else, when you have to see that by me choosing to do DoorDash, I just had to pull money from, this or that, or now I can, do this thing I enjoy less. I mean, that stings and you realize what you're actually doing to yourself. So I'd say all the little things add up, but food, car payments, yeah, those are the big ones that I see.
Yeah, definitely the memberships. One of the things that we'll occasionally get into here is when we're dealing with buying non-performing debt, we'll get people that want to modify the loan, haven't paid in 6 months or a year. And one of
Okay.
the things we ask them is like, hey, send over two months of your bank statements. Let's see what's going on. Let's talk about your finances. What are you spending monthly on this? What are you spending monthly on your subscriptions? And this one guy hadn't paid his mortgage in 2 years, and we find out that basically what he's spending monthly in monthly subscriptions, like to his OnlyFans subscription, would have
Gosh,
paid his
man.
mortgage payment. I'm like, how are you and your wife doing
Yeah.
this? I'm
That's
like,
yeah.
I don't have any sympathy for you, because you're not spending things smartly on here. I don't care who's on OnlyFans, unless it's your account. That's a different story.
Yeah. I mean, subscriptions are another one where people just don't realize what they're spending, or they'll sign up for free trials, not
Yeah.
cancel them. Like we have like I have like a whole kind of to-do system that I would not be able to live without. Like I put all of my to-dos in it, I review them
Yeah.
or whatever. And so every time I sign up for a free trial, I put that right there in the to-do system so I know to go and cancel it. Right. But a lot of people just don't do that. And then they end up stacking all those things. And if you're not reviewing your spending, you just don't know, right? Like
Hmm.
when we first started budgeting and we first started actually looking at our spending, I was paying for like two Netflix accounts, right? Like how long was that going on? And I had no idea because I wasn't even looking at my statements. I wasn't even looking at the transactions that come through. So again, just working up the bravery to do that at least is such an important first step.
Yeah, that's so true. We like to look at what we have going out monthly here with subscriptions because we always like to, it's the death by a million paper cuts
Yeah.
in a lot of cases. And it does add immediate impact to your balance on your account and what you can put money towards if you're getting rid of those freebies or getting rid of those, taking advantage of those free trials, but then if you're not using it to get rid of it.
Yeah, and also like the thing that's motivating to us is like at the towards the end of our budget, we've got those things that we're working towards, right? Like, and for a while it was that next house down payment, and having that motivation sitting there at the bottom of your budget every month, like when the end of the month comes, and my wife and I sit down and review the past month in a zero-based budget, you get to choose what to do with your savings essentially. So if we went under in eating out, we take that $40 we save, we move it right down there to that category, and it's like a dopamine hit. It is
Yeah.
very rewarding to get to sit there and say, look at all the good things we did, and here's exactly where we're putting that money. Let's move it right now. Let's, put it in the high yield savings or whatever, get it ready to buy that property. But like knowing the immediate feedback of like how savings are going to help you in the long run, for me, like that's that's more fun than these subscriptions or whatever, right?
Yeah, definitely a lot more long-term gratification versus in signing up to see what happened on Yellowstone last night.
Sure, sure, for sure. Yeah. And like, and I get it. Like as humans, like we struggle with that. We struggle with like immediate gratification versus long-term stuff, right? And so it's hard to look towards the future and to plan for it. But the people that succeed over time are the ones that are able to do that. They're the ones that are able to sacrifice today for tomorrow. And I would say like, me personally, I'm probably one of the outliers, but my mentality has always been sacrifice today for tomorrow, right? Like I am
Hmm.
always been on delayed gratification like my entire life. It's just been my default setting. Like even as a child, like my parents told me I would just always want to save money, save money. I wouldn't want to spend money even as a kid. And like we're trying to teach our kids now. We actually, like, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. We teach them how to budget. So every time we go to Walmart, they get $2. They get to choose where they spend that or save it or spend some and save some. And like my 4-year-old saved up to a $10 car, which means he went to Walmart 5 times without spending his money. So we were super proud of him. But
Yeah.
yeah, so my thing has always been on delayed gratification. And I like a budget actually helps me, oddly enough, swing back a bit towards the middle. Like I need to be able to spend some money on today to enjoy today so that I'm not
Hmm.
always looking to the future. And a budget gives me permission to do that in some ways as well, because my wife and I have planned for, I enjoy video games. So I've got like a video game line item, and it gets $30 every month, and like I spend it, right? Like I spend it on fun things that I enjoy. So yeah, a budget can help wherever you are on that spectrum to help you swing back towards like a healthy middle, basically.
On your coaches that you have on the website there, how much of them are marriage counselors? Because you'll probably have a few arguments that
Yeah, yeah.
couples
So
have a little bit, huh?
you get into like whenever you're doing money coaching or budget coaching, like it kind of becomes counseling, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're talking about like how much you're spending your money, like and how you're spending your money, like we have a podcast, and the whole point of our podcast is we have guests on the show. They can introduce themselves. Instead, they give us their budget and we just go by their budget. We go by their line items. And the idea is that we can get to know someone just
Mhm.
by how you spend your money, right? So like at the end of the show, they get to introduce themselves and like all that stuff. But like the truth is you can get to know somebody just by how they spend their money. And like it reveals like kind of like where your heart is or what you value and all those things. So yeah, like we have coaches that will end up meeting with spouses, like couples and spouses. And like we've seen already um like healthy results of that, right? Helping couples get on the same page with their finances. Like finances are such a struggle for a lot of couples, and getting on the same page there like has trickle effects to being on the same page like throughout your relationship, which is really, really cool.
No, it totally makes sense. Now, with the fire movement, obviously a lot of growth is taking place and a lot of things have changed. over the last few years, especially like in the housing side of things. People are like, I don't necessarily want to buy a house. I don't see the value in that. And I would totally agree. In a lot of places, it's much cheaper to rent than it is to own these days
Sure.
out there. Where do you see, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, Zach, okay, but
Sure.
the next 12 and 24 months, where do you see maybe some of the trends going that people are going to be focused on a little bit more when it comes to their money and their budgets?
Goodness. Yeah. I mean, interest rates, like purchasing, like a house purchasing is so much harder now with interest
Yeah.
rates, right? Like all of those things. I would say, I don't know. I mean, us personally, we just purchased a house, even though the interest rates were high. We ended up locking in at like a 5.625 or so.
Oh, okay, okay. I have to throw something out there.
Okay, okay, go for
Okay,
it.
for being an investor for over 20 years, being an ex-mortgage broker, and I think back to 2004 to 2008, 6% was a damn good rate. Okay,
Okay, yes, yes. I
very
guess
good rate. Now, my parents, their mortgage was, which was the first mortgage I ever refinanced, was like at 18% interest
sure.
rate. Okay, and yes, we have a 2%, and of course, 5.625 is higher than the 2%. But come on, man, it's still
I
pretty
know.
cheap.
So yes, I get it. Like when I talk to my parents and like they dealt in like the teens or whatever, but it's also these things don't happen in a vacuum. Like it's a function of the economy at the time,
Hmm.
right? So it's not
Yeah,
quite apples and oranges, right? Because like
true.
growth was also happening, like all of those things. But yeah, like our first two properties we got in the twos. And so having one at like a six, like it hurts. But yeah, like it was just a life decision that we had to make because we have children. And again,
Right.
like swinging back towards enjoying the now and not always delaying gratification. Like my kids are only this young for so long,
Yeah.
and like I want to be able to prioritize that. So we made that decision. But yeah, as far as like the trends and where things are headed, gosh, I don't know, man. Like I hope the economy gets stronger. I hope that wages start to match some of this inflation so that people can afford things. But again, like all that I can say and like kind of the values that we teach are like don't look externally for things to get fixed, right?
Right.
Like, take control of your own situation, take control of the things that you can control. And that's not necessarily fair. Like sometimes it is unfair and the external circumstances are unfair and like the broader macroeconomic situation does suck, but take control of what you can control. You can control your outcome, right? You can take the dollars that you own, you can make a plan for those and try to stretch that money as much as you can and try to be good about saving up over time. And because again, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you save over time.
You're 100% right. Control what you control. I say this all the time. Doesn't matter who won the election or who lost the election. You can only control what you're in charge of. Kamala, Donald is not going to save you, no matter how you vote. You've got to take the reins of your financial reins by the hands and take care of it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole election thing, like, yeah, I'm sure what's happening in DC and all, it does have some impact on us,
Sure.
right? But like when it comes to optimizing your life, the amount of impact that has versus the amount of impact of like how much energy I bring to my kids when I go in there and say hi to them after this, like that's just way more of an impact in like my day to day and the health of my family. And I try to focus my effort on that instead of getting caught up in the all that stuff. So
Yeah, exactly. It's good to block out all that stupid noise in a lot of cases out there.
sure.
One thing I guarantee folks out there are thinking about that, mybudgetcoach.com. I get signed up for. What's that process look like? Is there a trial pay? And what is it to have an actual live person I can talk to help guide me along the way?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a website, it's mybudgetcoach.com. If you're on the socials, it's my budget coach HQ. We're basically on every social platform. And yeah, so you sign up, you get a free trial. It's a 35-day free trial. And then in order to sign up, you kind of pick a coach, right? So you go, if you hit the start my free trial on the webpage there, or hit the find my coach, you basically pick a coach on the directory. And I'd say, spend some time reading through some of these, right? Find somebody that connects with you. It's funny you brought up like counseling or whatever. I have a friend who is a marriage and family therapist, right? And in his line of work, he says that like one of the highest predictors of success in like a therapy relationship is just the affinity you feel with your counselor, right? Picking somebody that you get along with is just so helpful in like positive outcomes. And we think
Mhm.
that's the same in like the financial coaching space as well. So pick somebody that you'll resonate with, pick somebody that you want to chat back and forth with, and then get started. Setting up your accounts, setting up your categories, starting to see your transactions come in from your bank, starting to categorize those, starting to actually deal with your overspending and your underspending. But take that step and message your coach or sign up for a call and talk to them one on one. It is a learning curve. Budgeting is a skill. It does take effort. But the thing I always say is like you can choose your pain, right? Like there's the pain of like learning a new skill and learning to be diligent with your money. And like sure, there is like some frustration and effort that is taken there. But the alternative pain is one that you probably know all too well, right? The pain of avoiding your finances, the pain of not knowing what's happening, the pain of overdrafting or not being able to afford the things you want to afford or feeling like your money is just gone every month. Like choose your pain in life, right? And I would much rather choose the pain of being intentional than the pain of avoiding. And I would encourage everybody else to do that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. 100%. It's a little pain. And when folks are getting started, there's a little bit more time on the front end figuring things out. But then how often do you suggest people go back and review it with their spouse, with their family? Once a week, once a month, once they get
Yeah,
things
so
rocking and rolling?
we would say that a budget is something you should live in, right? So like my wife and I have it on our like we have the apps on our phone. Like as we're out spending money throughout the day, we go in. It should be kind of easy to just open it up and it'll
Yeah.
say like you have, 8 new transactions and you just kind of swipe on them to categorize them and then like you're done with it, right? But you want to kind of some people compare it to like laundry or dishes, right? You don't want it to build up too much. You want to kind of create
Yeah.
that habit of sticking with it. So whenever we go out to spend money, we reference that category. So like my wife just went out to get groceries. She looked at the grocery line item, she saw how much money we had, and that guided, what she could spend. So like whenever you're making purchasing decisions, you're looking at how much you have in that category. And then whenever you're, routinely kind of making purchases, you want to categorize them. So we sit down together every week on Sunday night and we kind of review the last week. Every month we close out the month, but then kind of on a daily basis in between that, not every day, it's not perfect, but we try to just, categorize things and reference those categories as we go.
Just staying on top of it, top of mind, definitely helps you make better buying and budgeting decisions for sure.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things. Like we have people that will say, like, I don't want to have to deal with this, every week or whatever. And I say, okay, like choose your pain, right? Like because we're going to be diligent about this, and we're going to choose to set aside extra time and money and effort, and eventually, again, wealth and luck and all those things favor those who are prepared, right? Like do the hard work, be the type of person that's prepared, so that you can take advantage of all those other things that come your way.
Now, have you always lived in Lexington or have you moved around a little bit? I mean, you mentioned, I think, previously that you were in London for a time being, right?
Yeah, so this is another thing of like my wife and I trying to decide like what is the life we value, what life do we want to build or whatever. Have always just felt like we needed to try living internationally. So this past year I took a sabbatical for my job. This is before I quit my corporate job. We took a sabbatical and for 3 months we went and lived in England. We lived in London. We found this place on Airbnb and then negotiated off of Airbnb to get a better deal so that we could afford it because London is super expensive.
Yeah, yeah,
But we took
definitely.
we took my wife's sister with us, and she kind of helped with the kids, and she got to experience London because she's always loved that culture as well. And we loved it. It was super cool. We ultimately decided that like we wouldn't be able to do it for long term, like visas and all that stuff. But yeah, part of building a life that we enjoy and being intentional with our money is travel like that. And we used to do travel like on a short basis where we'd go to Europe for like a week or two. And after living in London for 3 months, like this is the way I want to travel for the rest of my life. I don't understand why I ever thought it was a good idea to go for 2 weeks to a place and spend all that money just to be there for 2 weeks. Like if you work remotely or if you work for yourself and you can find a way to do this, like this is how we want to travel. So we're going to try to build into our budget. Like we have line items for basically saving up for every year, every other year, trying to be in a place for an extended period of time. And that allows us to kind of share that adventure with our children because this is something we love. We want to share that with our children over time. So yeah, it's just something we value. Again, like looking at somebody's budget, you can see what they value, right? Like I've got a friend who he is just obsessed with solar eclipses. And he has a category for each solar eclipse that's happening in like the next 10 years or whatever. And
Wow.
they're already saving up for that, right? And because like a budget is a reflection of what you value. And like for them,
Hmm.
they love this thing, they're gonna make sure that they set aside the money to afford it.
I love that. What was your favorite? I got to ask this because we've been to London a couple times and love the city
Okay,
too.
cool. Yeah.
What's your favorite memory, or you think about the London memory that comes to mind when you think of the city?
Oh goodness.
There's probably a few. I get it, but
Yeah, there's a few. My wife and I are like we're into like theater and like
yeah,
musicals and plays and whatever. So being in the West End is pretty cool. We lived in a place where you could just grab a bike and bike anywhere, and I love that. I love being able to just bike anywhere or use the transit. I did a couple things that in London that like I just wouldn't do here. That like I
hmm
was just a completely new place. Like there was like this startup night where you could go and pitch to a bunch of VCs, and I went and stood up in front of like hundreds of people and gave like this like pitch, which usually I'm pretty reserved and that's hard for me to do. But I'm there. I'm like, nobody
why
knows
not?
me. Nobody's ever gonna see me again. Like if ever I can be brave enough to do something like this, might as well do it here. So that was fun. But yeah, we also got plugged into like a local church, which was kind of cool just to like have friends built in and
Yeah,
to know people that way. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of, I mean, for kids, it's awesome because there's parks and everything. Oh, I'll tell you,
yeah,
okay, this was probably our coolest experience. We went to like a theater thing like downtown where they had like a series of like musicals do like a they do this once a year or whatever, and it was they had the King from Hamilton come out. I don't know if you're familiar with the Hamilton show
yep,
or whatever,
yep.
and he has a song, and at the end of the song it was King George, and at the end of the song he said, now if you all look up the sky and honor our king, and we thought like, oh haha, cool, like you're the king, whatever. But the second he did that, like jet planes flew by, and then like more jet planes flew by, and then like the flag of England was put in smoke in the sky, and it turns out like the king's actual birthday was happening, and so they were honoring the king right down the road, and so they had
Wow.
timed the end of this song from Hamilton to reference the actual celebration of the king, and that was just like a pretty cool moment. So
That's really really cool. I would say going to when I was there, we went to the Globe Theater and caught
oh cool, cool.
Shakespeare, and then the meat pies and Taming of the Shrew, and at the Globe Theater is pretty freaking cool for sure.
That's
Definitely,
awesome.
yeah.
That's cool, man.
That's so. I think that's one of the great things too is that traveling abroad, especially you spent 3 months there, you figure out, hey, things aren't maybe nearly as expensive as we think. Yeah, now if you go for a week and you're staying at a five-star resort or a five-star
Sure.
hotel, there's things that can make it much more affordable out there first, and just be just as good, if not better, than um, first class, everything, and all that stuff. I like eating at places that are not that five-star, but are where the locals go. The food's better, and the atmosphere is often a whole lot more affordable too.
Yep, yep. It's all in what you make it. Yeah, we travel super cheap. Like we will like rent out our house when we leave as well, so that like we're not double costing or whatever. Like we travel super cheap because we find a way to make it worth it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it out there. Website mybudgetcoach.com. Check it out. It's really an easy website, really great app out there. And the fact that you can talk to or review some of the coaches and find one that matches up with your flavor or your background and things like that, I think is what makes it so unique for those of you out there looking to do this, that need to do this and want to get the things rock and roll. Because really having a good budget and knowing where your money's going is really the first step to finding financial independence and the RE side, retiring early. Because you got to know where your money's going to put where to put it. And you guys do such a great job with that, Zach.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks so much for having me on. This has been fun.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you. We'll be doing some more stuff, I think, with you in the near future here for sure. Definitely.
All right, cool.
Thanks, man. Hey, good luck with that water leak there from Junior. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much. I'm gonna go rip out the ceiling now and fix that.
Zach was telling me beforehand that basically you all guys just moved to this new place in Kentucky, right?
Yeah, so this is our new house and it's old. There's lots of problems with it. Most of the windows, like the vapor barrier is broken in them, so we have to fix that. But like the first week we're here, my 2-year-old, we put him to bed at 9 o'clock. We go into there to check on them at 10. He's at the sink. He's got the sink turned on. He's got the thing clogged. The water is just overflowing and overflowing and overflowing. And we have no idea how long this is going on for. Like it could have been 30 minutes. We just don't know. So yeah, we had to like rip out the ceiling, rip out the drywall, like get all this stuff out. And trying to convince a 2-year-old that what he did was wrong is funny too, because he thinks it's pretty funny that he caused all this damage at this point. So
Well, it's a good thing you have that in the budget for sure.
for sure, for sure.
Does there, and that, I don't know, do you guys have I haven't seen this, but an asset or a facet, maybe further down the road of helping folks with their budgets when it comes to investment properties, since you are also an investor?
Yeah, so this is where it's like up to kind of the coaches, right? So like we have some coaches who focus on this, right? Who know this world and can like kind of speak that language. And if that's something that matters to you, like pick a coach on there. So like I'm a coach on the platform as well, and kind of my like slant or my audience that I talk to is people who are trying to retire early, right? So I speak to fire, I speak to like the importance of like not only having a budget to get to fire, but once you get to fire, you're going to have to live on a drawdown, right? And so like you're going to have to learn how to live on an expectable amount so that you can feel comfortable that you will sustain fire as well. So that's kind of my slant, but we have coaches on there who focus on any number of things. So, pick a coach that kind of works for you.
Awesome. Great stuff there. Zach, have a great day, buddy. Thank you so much. And we'll be seeing you later. All righty.
All right, see ya.
Right. All right, guys, gals, go check it out. mybudgetcoach.com. Get signed up for that. It's a great tool to add to your tool belt, especially if you guys don't have any tools in your tool belt. Great place to get started, to get you on that path, to be able to see where your money's going on a monthly basis and start working towards that path of the first down payment or the first money to invest or whatever your focus is. But you got to start somewhere, and having no plan is playing to fail. So let's get you to plan so that you can achieve success and take it to the next level. So go out, take some action, everybody, and we'll see you at the top.